Okay, my pond lovers, this one is for you. You might want to take a close look inside your pond these days because you might be pleasantly surprised what you might find in the nooks and crannies. You're gonna have to get down on your hands and knees, look into little crevices of your pond. Let's talk about the babies you may be finding. Okay, I wish I had a better, more exciting video for you to look at because fish spawning this year happened really early and many times it went completely unnoticed. Usually what's going on inside the pond world is, I would say usually around June, when the water warms up finally, and then the conditions are perfect, maybe your koi will spawn, maybe they won't. If you have goldfish or some of the others, they breed on and off all season. Doesn't really matter on the weather. But koi are finicky. They like good quality water, they need perfect conditions, and typically when that water slowly warms up, and when it warms up to about 68, 69 degrees, that's when the spawning happens. And that's it, like clockwork. We start getting phone calls about the fish are beating each other up. They're practically jumping out of the pond. We didn't get that this year. We had a lot of calls of the odor, classic symptoms of odor of smelling fish. We started hearing a lot of different complaints about fish jumping up into the planters and getting up into the box edges of the pond, but we never had confirmation of any spawning until this last week. Okay, this is very common of what we saw this year. Darker water, tinted, crystal clear. I mean, we can see all the way to the bottom. We can see all the river stone on the bottom. But what I'm recommending you do is look for areas like this. Stagnant water right in here, because what we're starting to find is lots of reports of people sending pictures of babies going around, nibbling around. They never had any signs of spawning, never had any conditions, and then all of a sudden, if you start looking down into the crevices, that's where they're going to hang out. They don't necessarily aren't big enough yet to come out and play with the big boys. So they start going right into all the nooks and crannies, and they're nibbling on the algae, maybe the occasional piece of fish food. But it's not uncommon. We're getting these reports all over the state right now. So it's not isolated to one area. Even parts of Dartmouth and Worcester are reporting babies in their ponds, but never had any symptoms of fish. Of spawning. So look around all the crevices. Okay, so a little birdie flew by and I lost track. What happens in the pond in the spring? Normally when that water starts warming up, the conditions become perfect. We start getting reports. And like I was mentioning, fish will be jumping right out of the water, getting up on the plants. The male fish actually has to hit the female in the abdomen to force the eggs out of her. She cannot contract and push the eggs out like humans do. So it's very violent. And so we typically get reports of them beating up on certain fish, and there might be 4 or 5 fish chasing 1 or 2 around the pond. That is a natural process. But typically in June, we'll get those reports. Then we'll see or hear nothing for a long time, even though it only takes 11 to 14 days, I believe, for the babies to hatch from an egg to a little baby fry. The problem is they're so tiny, and they know that there's predators all around. Lots of things can eat these fish in the pond. So you lose most of them. Even the parents will eat the eggs as fast as they're laying them. But by the time those fish start getting a little bit bigger, right around mid-July, August, now the fish are typically big enough that you can see them when you're looking for them, and then very soon they will start popping out and feeding with the big boys and girls. And that's typically when we start noticing them. But I'm getting so many reports right now that if you look around the nooks and crannies in your pond, I would not be surprised if you find some. I'm having some customers report that they never had spawning in their pond at all. We opened their pond this spring. They didn't even do a clean out. We had no symptoms of spawning in this pond. I had 30-inch koi in it. And right now it's the middle of June and she's got hundreds and hundreds of 2 to 3 inch baby fish inside this pond, and never had spawning before. For those fish to already be that size, they had to have spawned back in like April. So this is a fun and exciting time of year. Not only are we at go time, ponds are coming into their glory, the water plants are establishing, flowering plants are blooming, and now you could have the babies floating around. So take a good look around the nooks and crannies. It's always fun to find out what colors you may get and how many. Okay, so what do you need to do to keep these fish happy? The reality is, not a whole lot of anything. Mother Nature's been doing it. By the time those fish have gotten big enough that you can see them and you're appreciating them, they've already done the hard part. Most fish are gonna die well before you even see them. They get eaten, they just perish, they're not that strong. By the time they're big enough that we can see, and as soon as they're big enough that they're actually out swimming around with the big boys and girls, the big fish, that means they feel comfortable that they're no longer gonna get eaten. And that's usually the case with koi. I find that, yes, if a fish swam into a koi's mouth, it would probably try to eat it. But once they're big enough to swim and outswim the fish easily, the koi are lazy, they're scavengers, they're just gonna leave them be. So if you're finding really baby fry, don't try taking them out. Some customers have gone and put them in kiddie pools if they caught the spawning, and they take the eggs out off the plants and try to do it. And like, then what are you going to do with all these hundreds of fish afterwards? So I just say, let Mother Nature run its course. Let the fish do the thing. If you want to help optimize, feed a high protein fish food. Make sure that the first ingredients in your fish food are of a protein source, not cornmeal, some kind of starch. Those are low quality food. Feed a premium high protein food. Throw a little bit into the corner. Maybe feed a little bit extra. Not enough that your water quality starts going south, but just start feeding a little bit extra so that the babies, when the big boys and girls are all full, there's a few little pieces around, and maybe throw them into the nooks and crannies, and you'll see that they'll nibble on that. Yes, a little shot in the arm with some high protein fish food would help those babies along, but outside of that, they're already doing it. Just don't lay off any of the harsh algicides, any of the big chemicals. Those fish are still vulnerable. Try to use as little chemicals as possible in the pond. It's a general rule anyway, but staying on the beneficial bacteria treatments. Overall water quality, high protein fish food. That's it. Let Mother Nature run her course. Hope that helps. Take care. Bye.